Well, you join me here today on the bank, and it's the ideal opportunity for me to give you 5 of my top tips when using our new weight change feeders. Tips that I think are very, very important. Tip number 1 has to be using the new weight change feeders to your advantage. You can change the weight. We've got 5 and 10 gram weights that can just be clipped on and off without dismantling your rig. You just slide your feeder up, slide the weight on, and it all locks back into place. We've all had those days where the wind's either changed direction or increased in strength, and you need to keep that accuracy, and you need to keep your cast very straight and true. Accuracy is always going to catch you more fish. So like I say, tip number 1 would definitely have to be using the weight change feeders to your advantage and really tailor making the weight of your feeder to the conditions that you're faced with on the day. Tip number 2 is a very, very important one. I'm a massive fan of changing my hook baits, and I don't mean renewing the hook bait after every fish. I mean changing from a pellet to a wafter to maggots, and having a quick change bead. I'm using the Enzon quick change beads, enables me to change my hook length very, very quickly. I can almost prepare another hook length ready, especially if I want that wafter to be critically balanced in the winter when it can play a massive part. But changing your hook baits and swapping and changing and experimenting, like I've already said, from pellets to wafters to a sinking boilie to a bunch of maggots, can just sometimes spur those fish on and get you an extra bite. And if you're fishing loop to loop or anything complicated, it can be very, very difficult to change your hook length. But with a quick change Enzon bead, I can literally change it in a matter of seconds, and I'm back out and I'm keeping that feed going in very regular and obviously keeping the fish coming. But sometimes a little change of a hook bait can really make a big difference. Tip number 3 is all about accuracy. I'm a massive fan of clipping up, making sure I'm dropping that feeder on the same place every single time. I'm building a little area up all the time. I'm being aggressive. Just think how accurate you are on the pole when you catch lots of fish, and try and mimic that when you're fishing these feeders. Another little thing that I'm going to incorporate into tip number 3 is when that feeder hits the bottom, I don't want to move it. I want that bait to start coming off of the feeder and set the trap immediately. If you start moving the feeder, you're going to spread that bait out, and also you could end up with some debris either on the hook or around the feeder, so I want to avoid that. So like I say, tip number 3, clip up, and when that feeder hits the bottom, do not move it. Tip number 4 has to be something that is ultra important when you're fishing these style of feeders, and that is the length of your hook length. Over the years, I've experimented with hook lengths from 2.5 inch, 3 inch, 4 inch, 5, 6 inch, and I always go back to the same measurement, which is 4 inch. I do find for smaller fish, shorter than 4 inch can be good, but for those bigger wary carp, it's definitely too short. So what I've always settled on is that happy medium. 4 inch seems really good for those F1s, and also very good for carp. So when you're preparing your hook lengths for the method feeder, always make sure you've got plenty tied, because you're going to need them if you're swapping between baits, different baits from pellets to wafters to maggots. But also make sure that they're tied nice and accurately to 4 inches. It's a measurement that I use now just solely. Like I say, in the past I have tried shorter and longer, but I always go back to 4 inch, and I just think mechanically it hooks the fish much, much better. My 5th and final tip has to be loading the feeder. The new weight change feeders from Darwin, you don't need a mould. They've got a nice lip round them, and it's just about taking your time. Whether you're fishing with micro pellets or ground bait, take your time. You don't want to be casting out thinking that's not quite right. You want to be casting out thinking that's absolutely perfect. And if it takes you a few seconds longer to get it absolutely dead right, the first push in, nice and firm, a little bit of a dent to put your hook bait in, and then a little bit more bait on top, and round it off nicely for a little bit of aerodynamics on the cast. Then just make sure that you get it dead right. So there are my top 5 tips when fishing with the new Darber weight change feeders. There's a lot of very, very good tips in there. Make sure you put them all together. Don't ignore any of them, because all together they'll make a big, big difference to your fishing. Accuracy is very important, loading the feeder, everything. Incorporate them all into your feeder fishing and I guarantee you'll catch more fish.